Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this video, we'll be going over an updated file list for Outsiders. This list isn't one that is more conventional, like some of the other file lists you might see. This one tries to use the brand new Dishonor line from Outsiders, and honestly it works pretty well. I'll explain it as we go along, and I also have a little bit of gameplay in this video to show you how the deck works a little bit. But with that said, let's get started. Starting off with our equipment, most of our equipment is pretty basic. Mask Momentum, Searing Emberblade, Snapdragon Scalers, and Tiger Stripe Shuko are the baseline main Fi equipment. Snapdragon Scalers gives an attack of cost 1 or less go again. Shuko gives your second attack with 2 or less base power, +1 and can't be prevented. Searing Emberblade is a 3 power 2 cost weapon swing that gets go again if you control 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, and Mask of Momentum draws you a card if your third attack action in a row hits. The main difference you see in this deck from all of the other Fi decks is the addition of Heartened Crossstrap. Heartened Crossstrap is a common equipment from Welcome to Wraith, and it says action, destroy Heartened Crossstrap. The next attack card you play this turn costs 2 less to play. Go again. The reason this is in the deck instead of something like a Tunic or a Flamescale Furnace is because this deck is playing the card Surging Strike, which is just a 2 cost for 5 at red with base go again. If you are a Katsu player, you know what Hardened Crossstrap does, because that's your best in slot chess piece. But for Fi, normally you're not spending too many resources, but since we need to play the Surging Strike for the Descendant Gust Wave and the Bonds of Ancestry, Hardened Crossstrap is a really nice choice because it lets us play one Surging Strike for free. That's really the only reason for it, and I mean, it's a pretty good reason. Before we take a look at the deck's main board, let's take a look at some of our sideboarded equipment. Fyendal Spring Tunic is here just for our Icelander matchup and some of our other longer games. You don't really need this, so if you don't have it, you don't have to play it, but it is very nice to have. Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is here because in any matchup we need to find our Dishonor as fast as possible. We're going to be boarding this in. Not so much Dromai because Mask of Momentum is really good into Dromai, but any main hero activation effect, something like an Icelander, we would want to bring the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx in. And then finally, Norrund Gloves and Tide Flippers, just for some Arcane Barrier. Against Rune Blades, we'll generally only bring in the Tide Flippers, but against Wizards, we'll bring in both the Norrund Gloves and the Tide Flippers. Next, let's take a look at this deck's main board. This deck includes 3 Ancestral Empowerment, 3 Blaze Headlong, 3 red and yellow Bonds of Ancestry, 3 red and blue Brand with Cinderclaw, 3 red and yellow Descendant Gust Wave, 3 red and blue Flusterfist, all 9 copies of 100 Winds, being 3 red, 3 yellow, 3 blue, 1 Phoenix Flame, 3 red and 3 blue Rising Resentment, 3 red and 3 yellow Surging Strike, 3 Art of War, 3 Dishonor, and 2 Winds of Eternity. Going a bit more in depth with this main board, you can see that we are still retaining some of the Draconic Fi cards, the Brand with Cinderclaw, the Rising Resentment, and the Blaze Headlong. The reason these are here is because Brand makes some of our non-draconic things draconic, and we have a lot more non-draconic things. This helps with Fi's ability, as well as the Searing Emberblade, although Brand will get the Searing Emberblade go again anyway, so it really doesn't matter, mainly for Fi's ability. And Rising Resentment actually plays a pretty big part in this deck. Rising Resentment ability actually matters here, since sometimes we can get a free Descendant Gust Wave or a free Surging Strike off its effect. So watch for that one when you're playing this list. We also have the Blaze Headlong, since it's probably the best Draconic card, and we have the one Phoenix Flame just so we can use it with our Phi's ability. Looking at some of the newer stuff we're putting in this deck, the Surging Strikes, Descendant Gust Wave, Bonds of Ancestry, and Dishonor. Surging Strike, there isn't much to say about it. It's your combo starter. It's a 2 for 5. There is a Draconic one, but it isn't named Surging Strike, so you really can't play it. Descendant Gust Wave and Bonds of Ancestry are probably the strongest ninja cards out of Outsiders. Descendant Gust Wave is a 1 for 3 with Go Again at base, and if Surging Strike was the last thing you played, it's free and gets +2 power, which is absolutely insane. Bonds of Ancestry is pretty much drawing us a card, and it has Go Again if we play it after Descendant Gust Wave, which, again, isn't hard since Descendant Gust Wave does have a base of Go Again. It's also free, which is absolutely crazy. We do have a few targets in this deck. Other than Bonds itself and the Descendant Gust Waves, we are playing the Flusterfists, 100 Winds, and Winds of Eternity. Flusterfist is just a 0 for 4. Normally that's what we're giving Go Again with our Snapdragon Scalers if we need to play another attack, but it's just a strong attack and a good 3 block, so we're playing 6 of it. And then the 100 Winds are here because they're just a baseline attack with Go Again. They're the easiest thing to get, which is why we're on all 9 copies, and we're on 2 Winds of Eternity because in some of our mid to late game situations, shuffling in 1 or 200 Winds with Winds of Eternity isn't bad. It's also easily grabbable off Bonds, so if we find we're going to have 1 to 200 Winds after we get off a Bonds combo, we can find our Winds of Eternity instead of finding something like a Flusterfist or another 100 Winds to try and shuffle the few we're playing that turn into our deck. The last attack in this deck I didn't talk about yet is Dishonor. If you're playing Descendant Gust Wave and Bonds of Ancestry, you might as well play the Dishonor. Dishonor is a card that makes your opponent's hero lose all abilities if you have a Surging Strike, Descendant Gust Wave, and Bonds of Ancestry on the combat chain when it hits them. It also gets +2 if you play it after Bonds of Ancestry, so a lot of the time it will just be a 0 for 4, even if we don't get the effect. We're not playing Katsu, so we don't have the capability to tutor it very easily, but Dishonor is still a super strong blue that we definitely want to be playing. This deck is only playing 6 non-attacks, and those would be 3 Art of War and 3 Ancestral Empowerment. Ancestral Empowerment pretty much just makes your deck 57 cards, well, 56 because Phi is putting 1 into the discard pile at the start of the game. It's just really nice. It can let us hit over to trigger a Mask of Momentum or our Dishonors. Remember, you can't play it on the Blaze Headlong since it's not a ninja card, but you can play it on every other attack in the deck since they are all ninja cards. Finally, Art of War. Not as strong without Tunic, but we do have Tunic in the sideboard, and it is still extremely strong in this type of deck, even though we have some key pieces that sometimes feel a little bad to banish. 3 Art of War is still perfect for Phi. We get free attacks from our hero ability with the Phoenix Flame, and we do play cards a lot easier than a Katsu would, since all of our cards have a cheaper resource cost, except the Surging Strike, but generally, on a good Art of War turn is when you'll be using your Hardened Cross-Strap to make your Surging Strike cost 2 less, so it's really not bad at all. Personally, I really like this deck. I think it's super fun. It's not as consistent as Katsu, but it's definitely a lot more aggressive and definitely has a lot more kill pressure than trying to just land Dishonor over and over again like a Katsu would. Finally, let's take a look at this deck's sideboard. 3 Command and Conquer, 2 Down and Dirty, 1 Red Razor Reflex, 3 Red Sink Below, and 2 Energy Potion. Command and Conquer is here because it is super good. That's what I had in the deck while testing. I never took it out. Again, I said it a lot. I personally don't own Command and Conquers, But you can play any other popper you want. You could go up one more down and dirty, play 2 of something else. You could go up one more down and dirty, play 2 more Razor Reflex. But if you own Command and Conquer, it is the best card in this slot. 2 down and dirties are here for our Codex of Frailty matchups. Sometimes getting the bit of extra block from your discard pile is really useful. I think Down and Dirty is a great card, and recently a lot of people have been buying him up because Codex of Frailty is such a strong card, and this card can sort of alleviate that card's strength. Razor Reflex, only one of it. You could go up more, as I said, but this is mainly here for when you're bringing in the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to sort of guarantee that you hit your strong hit effects in those matchups, your Dishonor, maybe even a Winds of Eternity late. It's really important to make sure that you land the Dishonor, because if you're bringing in Pouncing Lynx, you're losing a lot of card draw with your Mask of Momentum, so you really need to make sure your hit effects count. Sync Blows are here. For any matchup, you need D-Reacts, Ranger, Guardian, decks of that sort. And then Energy Potion is here just for the Icelander matchup, because you are playing Ninja. Your deck just kind of folds to what Icelander is trying to do. Normally, we would go to the outro at this point, but I have some gameplay of this deck list to show you. So let's just go over to that. Alright, everyone. So someone in my YouTube comments asked for gameplay to go along with some of my videos, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. So today I just decided, why not since this will be a pretty fast deck list, there isn't too much specifics to say that I haven't said already, get some gameplay for the video. And this is recorded live, like I'm talking while I'm playing. So if I misplay, I'm sorry. I'll try to point it out if I catch it. But you know, I am just trying to get the gameplay here, and I probably could record the testing videos to see, as that might help me a little more than knowing, okay, this is the deck list I'm going to show. But, I mean, I think this probably should suffice for this type of video. I tried to record one earlier, but that was a test, so I wasn't sure how the audio would pick up. So that one isn't as good as I would have hoped. So we're trying again. This time we're against a Rhinar, and I'll probably explain the stuff a bit more if I do more of these, but this is the first one, so I kind of wanted to say all that. We're against a Claws Rhinar this time, starting with a Blood Rush Bellow, hitting us with both claws. Something that you want to... Ooh, that's a... Well, he doesn't have to go again anyway, it doesn't matter. Something that you want to notice on Fi is that you really don't care about your life total. You can just play cards and win. Like here, I'm probably just going to play cards and win. We have a really good hand. We get the Art of War, pitching a yellow. Generally, you want to pick Buff and Banish for your 2 Art of War choices. We're going to banish this Flusterfist in case we draw another Descendant Gust Wave, which we did not, which is a little sad, but we do have a really good hand nevertheless. I think this is a good time to pop the Hardened Crosstrap, even though it is pretty early. We get to get off this Surging Strike plus another Surging Strike off of the pitch of the Bonds of Ancestry. If I decide I want to, we could just go with a Sword Swing into a Fi Phoenix Flame. Opponent going to block for 6 here. Probably sees that we have a pretty good turn, you know, 3 cards, 4 cards, because the Surging Strike is from Arsenal after an Art of War. We're in a pretty good spot to just go with the sword here. And we're probably going to end up arsenaling the Surging Strike for next turn, making our opponent use all their cards, using all of their equipment here. Since they blocked with the Scabskin Leathers on turn 1, we are in an extremely good spot for the late game, since they'll have no armor in their equipment to block us later, and they'll have to spend cards from hand. Getting a 2 damage flame because of our Art of War, and going back to Arsenal, the same Surging Strike. So, and we have another Art of War hand. So this is a very good situation for us. Opponent going to just hit us for 6. We don't really care. At the point we're at, our opponent is going to be extremely low on life so early that we can kind of just bully them out of the game. We don't really care about our own life total because we're Fi, and our opponent can kill us if they have a really good hand, but as long as this hand they have right now isn't like an insane hand, they're pretty much just dead from this Art of War. 2 Rising Resentments is perfect. We get to go for a Surging Strike into the Descendant Gust Wave for free for 6, into 2 Rising Resentments for pretty big damage. And if our opponent doesn't block, since they have no equipment, if they want to block this Rising Resentment because it's Art of Ward, they have to put 2 cards in front of it. So they're either giving us a card off of this mask, or they're blocking, and they're blocking with 2 cards here, which is really good for us because we'll be able to threaten so much damage. We'll put our opponent to 13 here, and 13 is pretty easy kill range for Fi, especially when we're in a spot to where we actually have our armor up still. We're at a theoretical 20 health. This is another really good hand for us. Our opponent using their Hardened Cross Strap, probably going to come in with a bigger attack. Swing big is perfectly fine. Going to 8 is a little risky, and we're giving our opponent an arsenal. But looking at our hand, we can Descendant Gust Wave into a Bonds of Ancestry. We've seen, this is 2 red, so we don't have another red Flusterfist left, which is a little sad. But we are in a pretty good spot. We also haven't seen 100 wins, but I think taking 8 here is perfectly fine from how much damage we'll be threatening on our next turn, since we'll be able to go for a Descendant Gust Wave into a Bonds, into a probably Flusterfist, give it go again into a Sword Swing. I don't think we're going to banish unless we get another Descendant Gust Wave, but there's no real point in doing that. So I think this Bonds isn't going to get anything, but it will still be a hit for 4, which is really strong. Our opponent not blocking. Seems like they have a strong hand, so we're going to try to threaten them enough to make sure we get cards out of their hand. Like I said, there really isn't anything we can ban. Apparently, I don't even have a Flusterfist in my discard pile, so we couldn't even go get a blue one if we wanted to. And I'm planning on swinging with our sword here, probably. So it wouldn't be a very good idea to go grab anything off this. So we're just going to come in for 4. Going to come in with the Flusterfist, give it go again. My opponent has to block it or we get a card. And we're definitely going to snap it, because we get to go again. We can play the card we draw, and we can play our Searing Ember Blade swing because we still have 2 energy up. Opponent putting 2 cards in front of it. They had a pretty good turn having Alpha Rampage and a blue 6. So they would have been able to play it super easily. We probably would have died. But thankfully we threatened enough damage to where our opponent has to block here. They're going to take the 3 from the sword. We're going to be at a theoretical 12 because of our equipment. And we don't need our Mask Momentum this late in the game. Opponent using their Scabskin Leathers. Rolling a 5, getting 2 action points. going to go for a Savage Feast. So they'll be able to draw a card here. And they'll have one more energy up. So I think... So my opponent has one energy. At worst, they come in with 2 claws if they just drew a blue. Or, yeah. Because no other attacks he's playing should be able to be played off of 1 energy, since Savage Feast also has a cost. So if he did draw a blue, I think it's better to block with both of my equipment right now. And then if I need to, I can block with a card from my hand. If that isn't a blue, which it was a red, I can just take the 3 damage here and have a really good turn next turn. Force him to block my attacks. And I'd say this is a pretty much one game at this point. There isn't as much my opponent can do here. We get to come in with this Descendant Gust Wave. And my opponent will just concede here. So, am I able to look at the table? Yes. So, before I wrap up this section, go to the outro. We're playing a Descendant Gust Wave here. I don't know where it went, but there's a Descendant Gust Wave on the stack here, pitching this Fluster Fist. So we'll have 2 resources up. They don't have to block this one, but they'll have to block everything else. So we can put, so since we're going to be also be coming in with this Rising Resentment, this 100 Winds, and our sword, our opponent has to spend their whole hand stopping us from killing them. So with all of this pressure, Fi can put our opponent in a point to where they just can't do anything. And that's kind of the strength of Fi. That's another thing that this deck really excels at. Because you have access to Dishonor, which can't highlight it anywhere because I didn't draw one, but since you have access to the Dishonor, it's not as consistent as Katsu because you can't tutor the Dishonor as often because you are playing Pouncing Links in the sideboard, but you can't tutor the Dishonor like you can with Katsu, so it's harder to land that, but with the consistency and the damage output of the Bonds of Ancestry line, it just makes aggro decks so much stronger. If Ninja got anything out of Outsiders, it definitely has to be that and the Descendant Gust Wave. I think those 2 cards are way stronger than Dishonor, but Dishonor gets that flashiness of being the finisher with a really strong effect. So with that said, that's going to be it for the gameplay. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay point. Maybe I'll do more of these in other videos. I don't know how well this gameplay is going to be because I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to edit this gameplay. This is just going to be me talking. So hopefully it was good. Let's go to the outro. Alright, now that we're back from the gameplay, I want to thank you all for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll probably do some more gameplays in the future for videos that will probably be as fast as this one. I didn't really explain too much of the deck because it is pretty simple. Fi isn't too hard to play. It's not like Katsu where it's some intricate machine that you have to find the pieces for, or like Kano where you have to know the exact things you're doing. Like, you could not know you're doing with Fi and be perfectly fine. This is a little harder to play because of the bonds, but you know, it's still Fi. It's still basic. If you know your bread and butter Ninja gameplay, you should be fine. So, with that said, it's going to be it. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.